Social impact is going to be the last of the well-documented, empirically based information of why adolescents act the way they do. It's really, really interesting that adolescents know what are good choices. We have seen studies where you take a pen and paper questionnaire, and they give it to the parents and they give it to the children, and they give it the same one to both of them, and they have high-risk behaviors, what choices to do, A, B, or C. Kids score better than parents. And then you put them in their social environment, and more times than not, they make the wrong choices. Okay, so kids during this time period are affected a lot by their social environment. That's why parents say things like, what crowd are you hanging out with? Are those the bad crowd? Is that the bad crowd that you're hanging out with? Who are those kids? Who are their parents? What values do they have? So there's a lot of impact from their social environment. It's good to start that foundation, to teach them what are good choices, to communicate with them, to always be that support. Even though they are looking towards their peers for a lot of information and for support, parents are still the number one support and the number one role model in adolescents' lives. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about changes in parenting. When you have an adolescent in the household, this comes from a systems background. It used to be that there were some big things that happened in a lifespan, and we would say that it was coupling and then getting married and having children and then them leaving, and research now includes having an adolescent in your house. When you have an adolescent in your house, your whole house changes. Okay, so your relationship with the adolescent changes, your mood changes, your relationship with your other children change, and so it's now considered a life cycle stage of having adolescents in the home. Here's the big information for parents. When you have an adolescent, there needs to be sort of this rite of passage, that how do you go from nurturing and caring and providing to having an adolescent. And really what we look at is in other cultures, there are rites of passage. In African cultures, oftentimes what will happen is the tribe members will see a male in the community who's demonstrating behaviors that of an adult, and they will take that male to the mother and say, your son must die. And the mother will say, must my son die? And they will say, your son must die. And they will take him out, and they will perform their ritual, which he comes back then a man. That gives the mother the right to grieve the loss of her son and to embrace the new man. We don't have that in our culture. Maybe a driver's license, I'm not quite sure. But we don't have that type of rite of passage. And so parents have a really difficult time of switching from a nurturer to a preparer. And we need to prepare adolescents to be an adult, because eventually their risk-taking behavior is going to allow them to leave home and go and pursue something. And that tends to be the hardest part, that parents often say, I'm scared. Fear is often a word that comes up of how do I go from nurturing to preparing. Kids push for autonomy during this time period. It's, I want to make my own choices. I want to be more responsible. Be prepared for this. You give them choices. They make the wrong one, and then they say, you gave me the choices. Why'd you give me that wrong choice? You should have gave me 2 right choices. Then I would have made a right choice for sure. But they want more choices until they make the wrong choice, and then they don't want those choices anymore. They want to be responsible, but could you put gas in the car? I want to be responsible to take the car, but can you put gas in the car? And so it's this sort of back and forth and back and forth. And parents' role really during this time period is to prepare them to be an adult.